Thanks very much. Just a little commercial, sorry. They are selling my book downstairs. All the proceeds go to help the center here, and I will sign them if you'd like. They're $20. So it's appropriate that Todd went before me tonight. I'm a member of the Gallows Run Watershed Association. And so it's not the first time Todd has preceded me in anything toward the river, in tributaries, both literal and figurative. Leading up to my involvement with the river was my involvement with the Watershed Association. Todd and I share a community and an aquifer, and he invited me to become part of the Watershed Association, even though my home is not located where the development was. But when I would go to the township meetings where Todd was being very eloquent in his defense of the watershed and explaining how life cannot thrive without enough quality water, I was awakened to the concept of the watershed way of thinking. And this has very much to do with my book because at the time, I really didn't understand that. Like most people, I think I was passively environmental. It's easy to, how can you argue with, yeah, I want to have a nice clean earth for myself and to pass on to those who come after us. Who can't get on board with that? But it was passive. And when I met Todd, I learned what it means to be active as an environmentalist. And got involved with the association. We do the newsletter together. And I think it's won some awards. And it's something that I'm very proud of. But what it really had to do for me with the book was basically early in, I think it was 2000, I'm a real big yard sale person. My dad calls me thrift store Annie because like I just can't feature paying full price for anything. So I was at a yard sale one day and I picked up this book, this about 64-page booklet. It was a photo essay that had been published about a week after the flood of 1955, which is the subject of my book. And I had been coming back here. I moved back to Pennsylvania in 1997 after being in exile in the Midwest for 30 years against my will. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And I finally got to come home. I'm originally from Lancaster. Actually, I'm originally from Intercourse, but try telling people that because they're like, yeah, you're the only one. So I learned to just tell them Lancaster. So I came back here in 1997. I was really thrilled to be back home, but I had actually been coming to Bucks County before that for about 15 years to visit my cousin, which is how I discovered this wonderful area. My cousin is also an artist. She does stained glass. And I was really taken aback when I read this booklet because I thought, 15 years and I'd never heard of this? This was a really big event. And I'll be honest with you, the reason it intrigued me was I'm a weather weenie. Through and through, I love anything that has to do with extreme weather, and the more disaster-y, the better. So I was taken by this story, and I thought I'm going to check it out and see if someone has written about this. And to my absolute surprise, no one had, with the exception of a New York Times journalist, David Dempsey, who had put into print a year after the flood a book creatively entitled Flood. And it actually covered the entire event, which went from the Carolinas all the way up into Canada, which most people are not aware of. In Maitland, Connecticut, it washed away the entire courthouse. So there's a lot of people missing records up there. And they actually got hit a lot worse than we did right on the rivers. But at any rate, I used that book as a starting point. Understandably, because of the time, there were a lot of errors in the book. It's not David Dempsey's fault. It's the fault of, it was not even a year after the event that he was doing his research. A lot of the people that were involved in it were still missing. There were a lot of families he needed to talk to who didn't want to talk to him because they were grieving. And I intimately understand that because right when I started finishing up the research and writing the manuscript for the book, my mother died very suddenly. So I understand having to get something done while you're grieving. It's not easy, but the work can also save you. And it saved me. And as I learned from Todd, it's important to have passion, and it's important to understand the why of what you're doing. And so this project for me, which had started with just being, enamored of this whole weather disaster thing, became about understanding the way water behaves and why it behaves that way and how it makes us behave. And in doing the research, I found there were two kinds of people. There were the ones I call the river people, who live with the river, and most of them are right up hard against it, and they understand that the river is a neighbor who is occasionally going to come to visit. And it really surprised me when I interviewed more than 100 people for this book, and so I can completely understand you're needing your primary sources. That's a tough one, it's hard to do. I wish I had known at the time all the people who have since come out of the woodwork to talk to me, because I really needed them in the beginning and I had to ferret out what I could, and so people have come since then. And I've learned all these stories, and the people that live with the river, I call river people because they understand the river. They understand that the river is a living thing, is a neighbor, is a living entity. And then there's the other people who live on the river, and they expect the river to be there to serve them and their recreational choices and the things they want to do, but stay the hell out of my house. And that's just not the way it works. And I do a slide presentation about my book, and inevitably someone will ask me, could this happen again? And I'm like, yes, not only could it, it will.